So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you online with us, and so grateful that you've joined us. I was saying earlier that any day that starts with a picture of Xena, the warrior princess, on your screen, you know it's going to be a great day. I think it's also going to be covering a topic that's of interest to us all, which is continuing to build confidence and risk-taking during whether it's the launch of your business or the growing of your business. Or even some of you are just thinking about next steps in your own career. So welcome. We're so grateful that you've joined us. Theresa Bailey is your presenter today, and you are going to really be grateful that you spent the next 90 minutes with us. I know that because I've actually attended one of Theresa's workshops in the past. I will mention it was a face-to-face workshop, super interactive. So I know that she's probably going to be almost jumping off her chair today because she's used to doing more interactive sessions. But welcome, Theresa, to you. Welcome to everyone who's joined us. We would love to know a little bit more about you. And I know in these virtual situations that can be a bit of a challenge. So I would invite you to just let us know the city that you're connecting from in the chat. And if you don't know where the chat button is, that's in the bottom center of your screen, most likely. Just let us know what city you're connecting as well. If you would let us know the name of your business. We would love to know even, a link to how we can get to know more about you, whether that's your website, whether that's on LinkedIn. So let us know a little bit about you. I see right away that we've got folks from across various time zones and both rural and urban, United States, UK, Canada. So great to see everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I will take a moment while you're doing that to acknowledge that I'm connecting to this workshop today from Belleville, Ontario, which is about 45 minutes from Kingston, where Queen's University is located. And of course, during this time of COVID, we are working from home. So it is my honor and privilege to work, live, and play on the traditional territories of the Huron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. And during this time of COVID in particular, being close to nature, along the river, and just being able to ground myself in, I think, some of the beautiful natural surroundings has meant so much to me in terms of my mental health. And I think that anyone who has lived through what we have lived through realizes that there's more to this than screens. We have got to disconnect every now and then. And it has been an honor and privilege to live in this region and to recognize the cultural roots of this territory. If you don't know, by the way, the traditional First Nations territory where you're residing, and if you are connecting from Canada, I'll mention you can find that out if you just go to www.native-land.ca. So you might want to learn a little bit about the traditional territory where you are located. So without further ado, I would love to just mention a couple of housekeeping items, which include, we are recording today's session. So for those of you who would like a copy of the slides, and maybe you like to take notes, but you also like to participate, by all means, email me after this session or during. I will drop my email into the chat, and you can let me know that you would like a copy of today's recording. At the same time, if you would like to be on our regular weekly email list, by all means, just let me know. We have so many workshops coming up, whether that's in terms of financial forecasting, or next week we have a virtual cafe for women entrepreneurs taking place on the 23rd. We would love for you to engage no matter where you're located and just build this community of women entrepreneurs further. So you can let me know, again, if you email me that you'd like to be on that email list. So I'll drop my email in there in just a moment, but for now, I definitely would like to welcome Theresa Bailey, who's going to speak to us on this very important topic today. And I know there's a lot of mindset involved with it. Theresa, you're just such a fantastic individual to talk to this. So everyone, let's welcome Theresa, and Theresa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm in Madoc, Ontario, which is right between Toronto and Ottawa, for those of you who aren't familiar. And I have been in your seat for a lot of these workshops that have taken place. So it's a real thrill, and I'm so grateful to be here. And this is the first time I've ever had Xena on the front of a slide deck, and so that's kind of fun for me too. And as Carrie said, it's a new thing. It's old now, but it's new to be doing these virtual things. So I'm going to move pretty quickly. There's a ton of information to get through, but I will have the slides for you after, and we'll pause at a few points and ask for questions. So thank you again for taking the time to be here. It's a real honor. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today. We're going to talk about confidence and risk taking, and we're talking about things like defining confidence and risk, redefining imposter syndrome, what that is, assessing confidence. We'll talk about self-doubt. We'll talk about neuroplasticity in your brain and retraining your brain. And we'll talk about developing a growth mindset, as Carrie just mentioned, and overcoming fear and creating momentum through personal plan, and how baby steps can make such a big difference when it comes to confidence. So it's always awkward to start out these presentations and tell you who I am. So I actually crossed that out, and I wanted to tell you my why. And for those of you who have done Find Your Why, I'll talk about that in a second. My why is living courageously to inspire others to live courageously, so together we can change the world. And I actually developed that why before I ever thought of doing a confidence workshop. I was doing a lot of other things, but what I understand and what I learned is that each time I took a risk, each time I put myself out there, not only did I grow, but people around me thought maybe I can do that too. And that's not something that is specific to me. That is something that we all possess. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important for us to take those chances and to live a little bit beyond our comfort zone so that we can encourage other people to do the same thing. So for those of you who want to find your why, it's a whole process, and Simon Sinek is the guru behind that, and he has 2 books, Find Your Why and Start Your Why. And that's a process I've actually worked through with organizations before, and I've done it for myself. And believe it or not, the last public function that I was at was Simon's talk in Boston 3 days before they declared a state of emergency. And then I came home, and I, without being told to self-isolate, I did, because it was kind of scary. So that's kind of my good old days. In the good old days, I watched Simon. So how did I end up here talking to you about this? So a little bit about me and the work that I do. So for the past 20 years, I've been working in community development, research, and evaluation, and I have a master's in community psychology. For the past 10 years, I've been an independent consultant and an entrepreneur, and I now focus on team building and helping groups and teams grow into the best that they can be. I'm also the founder of a website and social media platforms called Canadian Hockey Moms that started about 10 years ago, and I'm the president of a small town hockey association. For the past 3 years, for the past 18 years, I've been a mom, but I have 3 children. They're almost 18, almost 16, and almost, she is 12. I'm a life coach, resilience practitioner, and I'm Live Well, Work Well certified. And this is an important part of it too. For the past 4 years, I've been a solo mom and an entrepreneur and a homeowner. So when it comes to confidence and taking risk, especially during times of COVID-19, that sort of is the foundation of all of those other things. So how did I end up here? Well, small actions can lead to exponential changes. And I took a chance and posted an article entitled, "Why Do Women Cry When I Ask This One Question in My Workshop?" I posted it on my website, and I posted it on Facebook and LinkedIn. And anyone want to take a guess to what that question might be? You can type it in the chat if you think, or you can think to yourself. Women get uncomfortable when I ask them, what is one personal strength that you bring to the team? So my slides actually, I just noticed that when I changed the format, by the way, from the cloud version to this version, some of the words got mixed up. So if that's what happens, I'll fix it before you get them. So I ended up here because I posted an article called What One Question When I Ask Women Makes Them Cry During Workshops. And that question is, what is one personal strength you bring to the team? Now, we can talk about personal strengths when we're in an interview or when we're having a job evaluation or whatever that is. But when we're doing it in a group, it can often be a lot harder for women. And it was inciting tears. And it was something that I found really fascinating. So after posting that article, and we'll get to some of the reasons why I think that happens later, why women cry. After posting that article, which was one small action that I wasn't sure if I could do, a long lost high school friend reached out to me. He talked to me about how he has a team of really highly talented, overachieving women that are exceptional, but they believe in themselves not as much as they believe in each other. So from there, he's the vice president of Hasbro marketing. So I ended up doing experiential workshop virtually because by then COVID-19 had hit, just for the Hasbro Canada marketing team, which generated more interest from others and other workshops. And Carrie happened to see that. And here I am. And also from that, there have been 1,000 other opportunities and possibly some of the biggest of my life. That was one small step that I made. So there are other concepts that I work with in workshops I deliver around similar constructs. So one would be tools for a resilient workforce. One is finding opportunity in adversity, and another is innovation and creativity in the workplace. So all of these concepts, a lot of the constructs are overlap because they are all interconnected and interrelated. And for me, I have an endless curiosity, and I'm a researcher by training, and I'm really curious about how we can find practical evidence-based solutions to help people live their best lives. And that's really what I'm interested in, and I've always been interested in for the last 20 years. So one thing that's important to know is that all of this stuff that I'm telling you is evidence and research-based. It's not just kind of woo-woo, but it's stuff that I also have practiced and that I believe strongly in because most of the stuff I've tried myself. So we're going to come back to this a bunch of times. One small action can have big consequences, and the consequences from a series of small actions can be exponential. So when you're thinking about confidence and pushing yourself, it doesn't have to always be massive change. It can be these more small incremental steps. So what is confidence? Can you type into the chat what you think confidence might be? Your idea of what confidence is. Boldness. Yeah, boldness to do, trusting yourself and your gut. Very good. Believing in yourself. Yep, great. Ability to make important decisions without fear. Resilience, being capable of doing something. Great. Being able to overcome the voice that says you can't and doing it anyway. Great, right, good. Those are great. And all of those things are components of what confidence is. So confidence actually incorporates all of those things, but it is developing the identity of someone who will take action and figure it out. So the three important components, but it's developing the identity. It doesn't mean that you have to always feel safe. It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel uncomfortable. It means you have to have that persona and the identity to take the action and to knowing that you're going to be able to figure out whatever comes at you. And that's a little different than we think of confidence sometimes because we think confidence is, well, I'm not going to be afraid to do this. No, you probably are going to be afraid, but you're going to do it anyway. So there are two psychological concepts that are important to understand: the locus of control and the bias toward action. So those are two concepts we're going to be talking about. I had a little chuckle because when you're doing PowerPoint, they choose the little icons that you use, and it chose an actual locus, which I thought was funny. But I kept it because I thought, well, maybe it'll help people remember, and it's also purple, which I really enjoy. So we'll use locus of control and bias towards action. So those are two important concepts that we're going to talk about. So let's talk about locus of control and thinking about the question that makes women cry. Can anyone tell me about the imposter syndrome? Does anyone know what that is? The imposter syndrome. You can add your comment in the chat. Anyone ever heard about that? It's something that we hear about a lot, especially with women, but actually it impacts men too. Not thinking we are good enough, feelings of inadequacy, my inner voice. Yeah, exactly. I think I know about the imposter syndrome too well. Right. So what is that? What is the imposter syndrome? So the imposter syndrome really comes back to locus of control and trying to understand whether you have an internal or external locus of control. So people who have an external locus of control think that, or act that, things outside of me make the difference, and that they're a victim of circumstance, and that success is not because of me. So if a success happens, someone with an external locus of control does not take credit. Someone with an internal locus of control feels that, or believes that, and acts that even when something happens from outside, I still have control over the outcome. So whatever comes at me, I can still manage some, at least, of the outcome, and I can handle how I perceive the outcome. So with the external locus of control, there are a couple different ways of understanding it and representing it. So if you think that you're someone who makes something look easy and you have an external locus of control, so if something's easy to you, you might discount the value. And right in the middle there, that's the imposter syndrome. So because you think it's easy to you, you think it must not be valuable because everyone must know how to do it. But that's obviously not true for a lot of the things that we do. Here's another example. So what we think others know compared to what we know. So we think that we know this much compared to what other people know. But actually, we have a whole separate component of what we know and what others know. And sometimes what we know and what they know overlap. But usually we each have our own worldviews and our own experiences to bring to the table. But if you have an imposter syndrome, you don't see it like that. You only see yourself as a small component of what they have. So that is someone who has an external locus of control or has a high imposter syndrome, just doesn't have that belief that what they have is special and worthy. So as I was doing this slide, something funny happened. I realized that I was experiencing the imposter syndrome because I was thinking, who am I to talk about confidence? Who am I to talk about all these women who are doing these amazing things when I don't know the things that they're doing? They know how to do the things that they're doing better than I do. So I kind of had this realization, well, no, actually, I know a lot of stuff, and some of it might be new to people. And if they already know things, maybe they can share what they know with me, or I can build my knowledge, or maybe I'll know something that is new and might be able to help someone down the path to learning more about it. So I had to fight with myself a little bit, and I realized it as I was working on that slide in particular. So everyone still deals with it to some extent, but it's acknowledging it and being able to push through it and then find some strategies to deal with it. So the second component of confidence we talked about is bias to action. So you can have a bias towards inaction, thinking that nothing I do matters and it won't make a difference, or you can have a bias towards action. And it doesn't have to be a huge an action to see what happens. It's one of those things where you throw it out to the universe, I call it. So you take a step and you see what happens. So the secret to developing confidence then is to start acting in a way that you normally wouldn't, or to act in a different way. So to do something when you normally wouldn't, or to act in a different way. And each time you do that, you build a little bit more of your belief in yourself and maybe your knowledge or your experience. And that is how you develop confidence. And that is how you develop your growth mindset. So if you take these small actions over time when you normally wouldn't, you are going to influence your own life and in turn influence your locus of control. Okay, so that's just kind of a quick and dirty about growth mindset. We hear about it a lot lately. And the good news is if you don't already have that, like if you struggle with that and you have that external locus of control, and I know someone here said that they have that experience of having an external locus of control or an imposter syndrome. If you don't already have a growth mindset, you can learn it. And we're going to talk about this a lot for the rest of the presentation. So just to revisit, if you don't have a growth mindset, and really think about if you believe this and challenge your views on this, and think about the people around you, because that's an important part of it too. If you are surrounded by people with mindset, you're more likely to have a fixed mindset too. And that is, you are born with it or it's set by a certain age. So it could be personality traits, it could be intelligence, it could be a skill in certain area, it could be creativity, that you think that if you're born with it this way, you can't progress. It could be that your family feels that way, we're not creative people, or whatever that is. Most people, or a lot of people, believe that in the Western world. It's a very Western world way of thinking. It's a very Western thing. So that he's talented because he has natural ability, for example. And we think this way about IQ tests, for example, and that if you have an IQ test at 10 years old, it will manifest the same way at 30 years old, that there's no change. And we know that there are lots of things that can happen to impact a test score, and that can change a lot over time. So growth mindset, for those of you who want to learn more, Carol Dweck is a PhD at Stanford University, and she is the guru behind growth mindset, and sort of put everyone on this revolutionary path about how you can change your brain and how you can improve and grow areas where you previously didn't think that you could. So she talks about basic qualities like work and ethnic talent and creativity can all be cultivated, and everything can be changed regardless of your set points. So there is acknowledgement that people have different set points for intelligence or athletic ability or whatever that is, but you can push those and you can change your brain and you can change your habits. So it's important to know that people with growth mindset are really differentiated, growth mindset differentiates people who are successful and those who are not. People with growth mindset are more resilient. They're better at coping with failure, and this is key, they challenge themselves despite the potential of having weaknesses or flaws revealed. And that is really key, because a lot of us want to keep our weaknesses or flaws close to our chest. We don't want people to know. And it's really important that we understand that the people who achieve the highest and the most and experience a lot of success don't necessarily have that same fear. They build on it. So we know that competence involved developing the identity of someone who will take action and figure it out. Those are the two key components. So having the persona, or having the identity of someone who will take action and figure it out. We know that this involves a growth mindset and an internal locus of control. So why is it so hard to do the things we need to do? Anyone have any thoughts on that? Why is it so hard? And we'll cover, you can type them into the chat if you want. We'll probably cover a lot of them in the next hour or so. Monkey brain. I'm not sure what that is, but self-doubt. Yes, we'll talk about self-doubt. Fear of failure. We'll talk about fear of failure. Time and other responsibilities. Yep, that's a tough one, especially for women too. Limiting beliefs. Yeah, great. So you get it. Why? You experience this. We live it. We all have things that stop us from doing the things we need to do. And we need to figure out what those things are. One of the main challenges to even getting started is understanding the concept of activation energy. So if you think about a flammable substance sitting there, so there's a barrel of gasoline, it doesn't catch fire without something activating it. It needs that match, it needs that spark. So why does it take us so much energy to activate, to set that spark in our brain? And the key to understand is our brain is wired to avoid risk. We are wired as people, we have evolved as people to keep ourselves safe. That's how we evolved. It's not a bad thing. So fear is not a bad thing. And what we have to do is understand we've evolved past that, and we have to overthink our physiological responses that are wired into us through evolution and also through our childhood. So this is a really great way a quick way. So we're going to give you a quick win right away. If you're sitting somewhere or you're procrastinating on something, and I'm going to give you the example. I hate making phone calls. I don't know when I stopped liking to talk on the phone, but I don't like making phone calls. And I do if it's not uncomfortable or if it's not work related, but that's something for me. So when I think I need to make a phone call, you have to quickly activate your brain and don't give yourself time to talk yourself out of it. I'll do it later. Oh, I don't feel like it. Oh, so-and-so's probably busy. So if you are sitting there, I think I need to make a phone call, and then I go 5, 4, 3, 2, and if you can commit to action by the time you hit 1, you will exponentially change your day. You will start acting more. You will take those risks that you don't want to, the small ones. I don't want to call because it's uncomfortable. You'll do it. Start talking to yourself and make yourself do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action. And this is a tip that was that's talked a lot by Mel Robbins. She's a motivational person who talks a lot about neuroplasticity. And this is one of her favorite tips, to not let yourself talk yourself out of the action, because we do it all the time. And I want you to start thinking about indecision as a form of self-abuse. So if you don't make a decision, or if you are not moving forward on something out of fear, you are actually hurting yourself, because you're giving away your power. You're giving away your power because by waiting, you're eliminating the choices that you have. You're eliminating the options that are available, and you're allowing someone else to make the choices for you. And it's really important to reframe what an action is. Clarity doesn't come from thinking about the action. It comes from doing the action and deciding if it was the right one or not. I'm not saying sometimes you put all your money in without making smart decisions, but there are things that you can do, and we'll talk about that too, to make sure that your decisions are the best one. If you don't know what you want, try a little thing towards what you think you might want, and allow that to tell you whether or not that's the direction you should be going. Inaction removes your choices for you. Another thing that I want to talk about is this concept of fixed and natural, or natural and cultivated ability. So my kids are very involved in sports, and I was involved in sports. We talk about this a lot. He's a natural. That kid should play because he's a natural. That person should sing because they're a natural. Whatever it is, he's a natural guitar player. The challenge with this is, if that natural ability isn't cultivated, it's only ever going to stay at that natural ability. People with natural ability who take it really far also put in the time and effort. And if you compare people who have natural ability to people who actually work really hard, who have less natural ability, the work ethic wins every time. And that's not to say that someone with a lot of natural ability can't really take off with the hard work ethic, but it also becomes a lot easier for that person to say, I don't need to. I've got that. And you can see this in people all the time. People are naturally good at someone, and you feel like they're wasting their potential because they never really had to try. It's the work ethic that will get you further. So people with a growth mindset, on the other hand, compared to fixed mindset, they don't really want to hear about natural ability other than how they can cultivate it and how can they grow more. They also don't see failure as failure. They see it as an opportunity to learn and build on whatever gains they had. So before we get into, this might be an okay place to pause and just see if there are any questions at this point.
So yeah, if anyone is able to unmute themselves, if they have a question they'd like to ask, or you can put it into the chat if you feel more comfortable that way. Are there any questions that have come up so far? This is I've been taking notes like a crazy woman here. This is amazing. There's been some great comments in the chat already. Any particular questions for Theresa?
And if not, that's okay. I just know I'm like whipping through stuff when I'm talking nonstop, which is not a usual experience.
Hi, Theresa.
Hi.
Hi, I've got a quick question. What if you have patterns of things that does not go well, like for example with friends, that reminds you of a previous incident with a separate group of friends, say, and it shows you a limiting belief. How can you overcome that when you have tried to change your habits?
That's a really good question, because it's all about changing our habits. And I think a lot of us, I think what you're asking is you're running into the same limiting beliefs with different groups of friends.
That's right, yeah. What if the pattern goes against where it's not in your favor?
Okay, yeah, I think a lot of us have experienced that. And we're going to talk a lot about people that you have around you, but also how you change your mindset and how you can break some of those patterns. So let me come back to that. I think it's a really good question. And the next few slides might get to some of the answers of that. And as well as when we talk about who you surround yourself with. But I'm keeping that in my brain, and maybe we'll address it as we kind of go through. Is that okay?
That's okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's perfect timing, because we're going to talk about now about habits and how old habits require, breaking old habits require inserting new habits. And the way that we actually do this is through neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is rewiring your brain. So neurons that fire together, wire together, meaning if you have if you take a chance and there's a failure, you get the failure wires. Or if you have a habit that pays off, those neurons fire in your brain. And the more we do it, the easier it becomes to continue with those habits. And we need to remember that the brain really changes. It can change throughout our lifetime. So when we think about myelination, when we think about neuroplasticity, why is it changing our behavior, thoughts, and actions so hard? Why do we keep going back to the same way and the same people and the same things and the same patterns? So if you think about it, we have 100 billion neurons in our brains. That's how our brains are made, with all these cells that are neurons. And I like to think about it, the easiest way to think about it, and I talk about it with my kids, is that your pathways are made, it's like a snowy hill. So if you're at the top of a hill and you're going tobogganing, you go down the path and you make your track. And then the next time you go up and you try to go down, you're probably going to go on the same path. It's the same in your brain. It just keeps taking the same path. And it takes effort to veer off to the right or veer off to the left, and because there's more resistance. And it's the same in your brain. Taking a new path and changing your behavior requires making a new path, which requires changing our responses and actions. I want people to understand that the brain research is really pretty new. And we used to think that development was done by the time you were 18. There is still a very large focus on youth or early years, obviously. However, we know that the brain actually grows and changes a lot until about age 25. But it even changes beyond that. And in fact, we can grow our brain. It can become heavier even after 25. So it does get harder if we've already had time to develop these patterns. And we have to develop some new pathways. And that comes by choosing new responses. Now, just like you probably weren't expecting to see Xena Warrior Princess, you probably weren't expecting to see Mike Tyson in this presentation. But I think it's important to talk about, because reading Mike Tyson's autobiography taught me about the concept of baseline normal. So I read Mike Tyson's book. I did not really like the man. Through the whole book, I wasn't really feeling it for him. And I understand that Mike Tyson came from poverty. He was watching people be shot around him. His mother was turning tricks with him beside him in the bed. All of these things that do give you some compassion for him because he grew up in chaos. So what happens is he gets to the end of the book, and here he's talking to, I'm curious if anyone's read it. He gets to the end of the book, and now he's with this therapist that he's met that is changing his life. And she introduces the concept of baseline normal. So what she says is, most of what you are returning to are the patterns that you developed in childhood. Every time you achieve success or things are going well, you return to your baseline normal, which is chaos, because that's how we grew up. So when I think about our own tendencies to take risk or not take risk, it really comes back to a lot of the time what we experienced growing up, how we experienced our childhood, and the rewards or not that we got at that time, as well as some things after. But we have to take effort to change our baseline normal. So once he started talking about that, I had a better understanding of why he made the decisions he did. He was always reverting back to the chaos where he grew up. And we can use that when we think about what we're comfortable with, how our patterns got ingrained in us. It's the same concept. So when I think about how my baseline normal has manifested, I was someone who did very well in school. I was someone who was doing very well when I figure skated at a very young age. And I was ingrained, not by my parents at all, they were always amazing, but I was by the people around me: be smart but not too smart, don't brag, be humble, don't seek attention, don't take credit for what you do, and maybe keep those strong opinions to yourself. That's what I grew up with. And I have had to fight myself every step of the way to get where I am, because I have always felt like every time I take, people are going to think that I'm, I look too vain, or I look, and so I put this giant picture on this screen as an homage to Carrie, who forced me not that long ago to get professional pictures taken, because to me, that was something I didn't want to do, because it felt like I was trying to make myself bigger than I was. So honestly, it is something that I still fight with every day. Another way that this manifested for me, especially through my earlier career, but I've grown out of it, is I would be working on these provincial strategies or training strategies around family engagement with youth or whatever it was, and I wouldn't fight to have my name on the document as a first author. I would say, oh, that's okay, we'll just share. Everybody worked on this, so I'll just be part of the team. And I didn't fight to have my name because I didn't want to look like I was taking credit for all of the work that I just did. And what that does later is when you're going to other places to show your portfolio of the work you've done, you're like, oh yeah, I actually developed all this, but I'm just listed as a team member, and it came from my baseline normal. And it came from things like when I was figure skating and I would do really well. When you're a good figure skater, when you're younger, you don't necessarily compete just against your age. You're competing against girls who are older than you. So the girls who are older than me did not like me because I was beating them. And things would happen, like I would start wanting to get second. I was the figure skater who wanted to get second because it was really good, but people didn't hate you then, And so that is something that I have actually tried to push through my whole life. This isn't a story about Theresa, but it's just a good way to show you the things that can impact you when you really dig deep and think about why you act the way that you do. So you grow your confidence through exposure combined with experience. So an example of how you can change your brain would be cab drivers who have have to memorize the city, have larger hippocampus than other people because it's for spatial memory. For those learning instruments at an older age, they can increase their brain size related to where the part that deals with where the fingers are. So people learning later in life. Brains can develop and grow, and understanding that your brain can grow and develop is important in understanding confidence because you need exposure and practice to actually change your brain. It is all about choices. You have to accept where you are and decide that you want to develop your awareness, change your perspective, and take action. That is the first step in developing confidence. So when you think about awareness, you have to think about your self-talk, especially of the fixed mindset. So you might tell yourself, I'm not good enough, I'll probably fail, I shouldn't have to try this hard, I don't want to be uncomfortable. And it's okay that your brain is saying that to you, because your brain's job is to keep you safe and to not put you too far out of your comfort zone. But you have to understand how it talks, how your brain is talking to you, and identify your triggers. So I asked you to enter some of these. These are some of the common ones, and you can indicate which ones you think make sense to you or apply to you. So you're trying something new, and that's when you get triggered. You're taking on a big challenge, you're making a change. If someone criticizes you, that's a big one for me. When you fail at something, by the way, failure for me, I have fallen 5 times in 2.5 minutes in front of 500 people figure skating. And if you can do that, I always think I can survive anything. So that's, failure is not always a terrible thing. Another one is when you do something wrong or make a mistake, when someone else makes a mistake and you judge them, when you're under pressure, when you're procrastinating, when you have a conflict with someone, which is a big one for me too, when your reputation is at risk. Yes, so some of them are, you are saying all of them fail. Yes, all of those. So some of you are feeling like all of, and that is normal because your brain's trying to keep you safe. Like, understand it's a normal reaction, but we can make the choice to change it. We can make that choice. And the first step is awareness of how you react. How do you react? Do you rationalize while you're not doing anything? How do you judge? Are you judging other people who are trying things? And what is your fixed mindset telling you? Are you beating yourself up? Are you blaming someone else? What does that look like for you? And the thing is, you always have control over your perspective. You always have control over the outlook. And you have a choice of how you see the situation. You can use challenges to motivate you or discourage you. And you can use the challenges to determine how you look at each setback, or how you look at each criticism and whether it's even worth considering the criticism in the first place. So you really need to consider the power of your thoughts and the language that you are using. Failure, is that a bad term? It's only a bad term if you never try in the first place, or if you give up. Failure is not a death sentence. And I like to think about the people who failed big time and achieved big time. Walt Disney was fired for not being creative enough. J.K. Rowling, how many, I think it was 11 or 12 rejections she got, right? Like the last one was the final one. Oprah Winfrey was demoted in Baltimore. Stephanie Meyer wrote Twilight. She was also, I think, 12 rejection letters. Vera Wang failed to make the Olympics, which is why she went into designing wedding gowns. Michael Jordan was cut from his grade 9 basketball team. And that's what I use with my son all the time, because he did not give up. If anyone wants to see a video of, or a work of tenacity, watch The Last Dance. It's on Netflix with the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan. And you may or may not like him, but you'll see what work ethic is and how he overcame the lack of natural ability. It's not that he didn't have natural ability, but boy, if there were two equals, his work ethic, it's unparalleled. So reframe what is happening. It's not a failure, it's a chance to learn. And if you can start looking at your life in that way, your life will open up, because all you have are chances to grow. And a great thing to say to yourself is, I'm not good at this yet. And that yet gives you an opening to make some new connections in your brain. You need to reframe your language if you're saying some of these things. So if you're saying, what if I'm not good enough? Change that to successful people fail all the time. it's too hard turns into, if it's hard, it means I need to put in more effort. If I don't try, I won't fail, to I don't try, I've already failed. If I don't try, I've already failed. It's not my fault to, if I don't accept some of this as my responsibility, I give away my power. Catch yourself in the act and change your language. I do this so often that my friends sometimes are like, nah, not right now, okay? I just need a minute. I know that you're going to be positive, but I need you to just, I'm like, no, it's great. So, but you can teach yourself to do this. I have. And you can take your growth mindset action. So this growth mindset is a whole way of living. It's a worldview. You can think, what could I do differently next time? If you have a setback or a failure, who could help me to do this? Who could I call on? How could I research this better? Or how could I research it better? How could I be better prepared for what I need to do next time? I don't know how to do it yet. And you can also use a lot of affirmations and what I call sagacity, which might be a new word for you. So if you have affirmations or words or terms that you like, you can put them wherever you want so you see them. I actually have something in my room right now. And the person who suggested this is slipping my brain, but I'll tell you later when I remember, because I know it will. It says, who do you want to be today? And it is challenging me to be the best me I can every morning. As soon as I wake up, who do you want to be today? Sagacity is a term that I hope that you remember after this because it's an important one. It's really what it means is inspiration and wisdom. So what is the inspiration and wisdom that you use to keep you motivated? What do you have around you? So my inspiration and sagacity, this bookcase behind me. I found myself on so many Zoom calls that I built a bookcase and I surrounded myself with things that I love, including some inspirational quotes behind me. I've got things that were made for me. I've got a picture of my kids, books that mean something. That sagacity is important in moving us forward. I have a mug that says nothing is impossible until it's done, or everything is impossible until it's done, by a quote by Nelson Mandela. This one my friend gave me, it says single, married, or building my empire. You know, like I always have mugs that I keep around me just as kind of a keep me going thing. I always have a mug. That's sagacity. What do you have around you to remind you to keep going? Resilient people, one of the common themes of resilient people is that they use inspiration from other people. They use quotes, they use videos, they use songs, whatever that is. And who do you have around you to inspire you? Another key that you can use is visualization. So you need to picture yourself going through the motions and visualize your success. This actually changes your brain. And it's used by athletes all the time to prime them. So if the goal is to rewire your brain, you need to chip away at what is in your brain to get the new belief. And you can do that through visualization by practicing it, by visualizing the success you want. And then by doing that, you're reinforcing it because it feels good. Success feels good. So if you're even visualizing it, you're picturing it, it feels good, you're reinforcing that, and it's a loop, okay? So when you're visualizing something, if it's got an emotional trigger, if it's got an emotional response to it, it has stronger wiring. That's why some of our really negative experiences are strongly etched in our brain, because emotion is really impactful. If you can connect a positive emotion to whatever you're visualizing it will make a difference. So if you think about how great your speech is going to be, if you think about how great it's going to be to have this meeting and how you're going to feel coming out of it after you've nailed the conversation that you've had, you will wire into your brain that it's happened, and you will feel more confident going into it. And this is a technique that a lot of the best and most successful motivational coaches in the world, they use this. You visualize it, you attach a really strong emotion to it, you get yourself worked up while you're visualizing it, and it's actually changing your prefrontal cortex and getting out of that fear base in your amygdala. You have to tie the logic of the action and the emotion together. So feel it when you're visualizing it. And it starts to prime you to making new connections. And I want to tell you, this is a research thing that actually works. So I'll try to explain it as quickly and succinctly as I can. 2 basketball groups of players. One group just visualizes shooting baskets. One group takes 100 shots a week. The group that visualized being successful by practicing visualization actually outperformed the just shooting, not visualizing group, because they thought about what it would feel like to make that shot. And I actually had an experience figure skating. I don't know if any of you figure skated, but when I was doing my axel learning it, I used to like twist my foot and somehow I would jump and land behind where I took off. It was really weird. It was this really weird thing. And I remember laying in bed and thinking over and over and over what it would feel like to do the right one. And I had done this for months. I'd probably done it for a year. And after visualizing and committing to, okay, it's got to feel like this, it's got to feel like this. And finally in my brain, I can't explain it, it clicked. And I went out the next day and I did it perfectly. I ended up with a gorgeous axle. And I could not explain it, but now I understand it. I understand how it happened. So there are other fun things that you can do to increase your confidence. Here are a couple of them. You can, and this is all research based, and I won't go into depth, but wear something that smells good, that changes your self-perception. It's probably easier to do right now while we're doing Zoom than if you're in person, because a lot of people are sensitive to that. Exercising changes your brain. You can increase your self-esteem. You actually increase your productivity if you take a break and exercise. That is research-based. That is true. Smile and make eye contact. And we'll get into mirror neurons in a minute, but smiling and making eye contact makes other people want to smile and make eye contact with you. Wearing heroic clothing is actually proven to make you feel like a superhero. And that's a research-based, that's a study that was done. And then the power pose. And some of you might know the psychology of the power pose. You've probably heard about it. This is something that was studied by Amy Cuddy from Harvard. And it is really about changing your physiology by standing big and taking up space. So Wonder Woman is in the power pose right now. So what they did was they were testing people who were standing in a Wonder Woman stance and their confidence level. And standing like this for 2 minutes, for example, before you go into an interview, before you go out to do a speech, makes a difference in your belief in yourself and also how other people believe in you. It increases your confidence in yourself and it increases their confidence in you, other people. And some people, like, it actually starts to change your physiology, and some studies have shown the power pose can increase testosterone up to 20%, which is unbelievable that there's that much power. So when we talk about these things, we also need to talk about who you spend your time with and how others act around you, because you want to spend time with people who dream big and have those dreams for you. Who is around you and in your network? And this is really important to think about mirror neurons. So mirror neurons are in our brain, and I was just talking about them with the power pose too, and with who you hang around with. It is, mirror neurons are created in our brain to be congruent with someone else. So you are impacted and impact the people around you. And you need to think about who your role models are. Are they going to pull you up? Because if you're around people who are positive, you're going to mirror that. If you're around people who aren't, you're going to feel that too, which comes back to the last question that we were talking about. And you need to make a choice, and you need to find those people who are pulling you up and who are having positive conversations. And you can be that example for other people also, but it shouldn't be only you having to pull the weight. So if you want people to be excited, you need to be excited. And if you want people to believe in you, you need to act like you believe in you. And remember, confidence is acting. It's not necessarily not feeling afraid, but it's acting the way that you want people to believe. And then you say, yes, Theresa, but that's not the point. that's exactly the point. I can't act that way. I don't feel that way. Yes, actually, you can act that way. And I'm going to tell you about my alter ego now. So it all began with Antoinette in 1990. And again, back to figure skating. I was, I guess, grade 10 at that point, and I had a friend, and we were coaching together, and we would get really bored because we were teaching these kids, and it would we'd be out there for like 2 hours and freezing. And we decided that I had a twin sister named Antoinette. So I would go off the ice and I would change my sweater, and I would come back and they would go, spin, Antoinette, and I would spin. And they would say, jump, Antoinette, and I would jump. And it became a joke that Antoinette would sometimes show up. So as I started going into areas where I needed confidence or to be someone that I wasn't, I called on Antoinette. And Antoinette followed me, for example, into my graduate school interview for community psychology. And Antoinette was there when when I was having an interview. Ed Bennett was his name, and someone went by with a vacuum in the hall, and he asked me to reach over to shut the door. And I reached over and my whole chair flipped, and I ended up on the floor in the office looking at this guy I'm trying to get into graduate school with. And I said, or I could end up on the floor in your office. And he kind of looked at me like, but see, that wasn't me, that was Antoinette. So I was fine. So Antoinette took all those risks for me. Even though it was me, it was easier to handle because I was Antoinette. As I grew older, and I got a BlackBerry, suddenly I became Warrior Princess, which is why I included her on the front. And she became my go-to for acting confident. And I adopted that when I was working for the Catholic District School Board, Algonquin and Lakeshore Catholic District School Board, as a joke when we had BlackBerries. And remember, you had those limited number of people you could BlackBerry message, and my name was Zena. And she became the person that I needed to be in those moments. And the thing is, as you kind of grow into who you need to be, that person becomes less relevant. I don't need Zena anymore. I'm that person myself. But there were times when I had to go and do presentations, or I had to do something that was really hard, and I would call on her, and I probably still would if I needed to do something really scary. I just saw, I've been looking for a good excuse to create an alter ego. She's going to own a cape too. Yeah, you can make her whoever you want. And the thing is, we're all in good company, because do you know Sasha Fierce? Beyonce used to use the alter ego Sasha Fierce. And she used Sasha Fierce because she was not that confident to get on stage. And then she had this album, and then she was like, yeah, I'm done with Sasha Fierce. I am Sasha Fierce. Like, I actually have all of those. I have all of that now. I don't need to be her anymore. Lots of artists and performers have used alter egos. It is a fun and funny thing to do, as long as you don't take it too far, I guess. But it can really help you, because you know what you're supposed to be doing. You know the behavior you're supposed to have, but you can't yourself. Like, I can't do that, but you can. You just do it. And the more you do it, the more you're wiring your brain, so you no longer need that persona. So we are flying through this, and I do want to leave some time at the end. So I'm going to go really quickly through this stuff, and you can contact me after. I love talking about this stuff, so I'm happy to talk about this stuff all day. There are 4 traps of self-doubt. Self-doubt is, this is self-doubt that we said we were going to talk about. There are 4 traps. There's hesitating, hiding, hypercritical, and helplessness. And the thing is, now that I've told you about them, they're no longer traps, they are choices. Once you identify that you're doing them, they're no longer traps, they're choices. Hesitation, we know, is triggered by uncertainty. And looks like waiting and perfectionism sometimes. And you really need to think of, why are you hesitating? What does it look like? Why do you do it? Why do you overthink it? And the antidote to this is to take small baby steps. And the progress principle, you can think of the progress principle. It's developed through Harvard Business School. Make progress by doing one small thing every day on the thing that you are trying to work towards. One small thing. And those one small things can make a huge difference and a huge impact. Hiding. this is triggered by a fear of others and feeling overwhelmed. And I have done this. I've been in places where like, oh God, I don't want to talk to anyone. And you kind of hide and tuck yourself away because you don't want to be too present. And you want to be quiet and you don't want to speak out because you think that your voice is not important or not relevant. And you feel paralyzed. And maybe it looks like you have a plan, you have a big dream, but you don't know how to make a plan, or you have an opportunity, but you pull back from it. And you really need to think about, what does it look like when you do this? Why does it matter that you not be seen? And if you are seen, does it actually matter that you're seen? You have to start identifying what you are doing to hide and think about, why are you doing that? And then you think about, what do I actually want, and break it into actionable goals. And we'll talk about how you can do that. We'll talk about public speaking in hopefully by the end. You need to take small, tiny steps that move you towards your goals. So I'll give you an example of how I did this, how I stopped hiding on my website. So 10 years ago, in a nutshell, there was a lot of politics, if you can imagine, in hockey. I had something happen. I wanted to start a website, but I hated how I wrote. I don't like people reading my writing. I don't know why. I'm a decent writer, but I don't like people reading it. So I actually started this website anonymously. And I was writing all of these articles that were being seen all over the country. And I did it as someone who no one knew who I was. So people were reading it locally and sharing it, and they didn't know it was me. And then gradually, as I got more confident, I was like, hey, did you know that's me? And I came out. And then only on the 10-year anniversary did I actually talk about why I started the website. And you can see on the front page why I started the website. And I didn't tell that story before because I was afraid people would be upset, because it made some people maybe not look great, but I know I was right. So that's a way that I started not hiding. You might always feel fear, and that's okay. I did, even when I posted that article. Show up and take action anyway. Being hypercritical. Are you hypercritical of yourself or other people? It looks like arguing with yourself or others, criticizing, complaining, putting down other people's accomplishments. We don't want to be those people. Focusing on flaws, focusing on what could go on. It's being negative, being hypercritical. And you're always looking for the negative outcome. And here, you have to make a commitment to yourself to give yourself the chance to prove yourself wrong. And you have to figure out what it is to eliminate the obstacle that allows you to get to that point where you can give yourself a chance to prove yourself wrong. One easy way to do that is to give yourself a time frame. So let's say you want to, I don't know, lose weight or start a new practice on social media, but you really don't want to. Well, you could say, I'm going to try it for a month, or I'm going to try this for a week, or I'm going to even try it once, and just get started. Give yourself a time frame to do it. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. At least you tried and you know. Chances are you'll try it, it'll work okay, and you'll build on it. Helplessness is the most extreme form of self-doubt that probably is rooted deep in our psyche, and we have to do the most work to get out of. And we get benefits from this sometimes, like being saved. People around you are pulling you out of it. And it looks like fear of success, playing the victim, dependency, having a defeatist attitude, or looking for pity. So it could be things like saying, nothing ever goes my way, throwing every excuse at the book about why you can't do it. Poor me. You could be unwilling to be vulnerable, or you could want other people to take on the tasks for you. You could also have a very serious fear of success, which I had to accept that I sort of did, wanting to get second when I figure skated. You know, deep down, you feel that if you have success, you will lose people from your life. And the truth is, you really might lose people from your life. And are they the people that are worth fighting for? I'm not sure. And that's a whole framework. That's a whole thing that you have to go through with yourself. But you could lose some people. You might not lose the people that you're afraid of losing. Because if they're worth If they're the people who want the best for you, they will still be there. But some other people might fall to the wayside. So, some solutions to helplessness. Identify what you think contributed, and also identify who you depend on and what kind of help are they for you. What do you get from each person, especially the people you're afraid of losing? What would you lose if you were independent and self-sufficient? What is it that you're losing? Because you're losing something. What is it that you're afraid of losing? And can you see how losing what you could fear could lead to more? And it's taking responsibility for yourself. And what have you done before? And how could you take more responsibility? What responsibility could you take next? So you have to take responsibility, which is key through all of this, right? Taking responsibility. And you want to also give yourself an opportunity to think about what happens if you don't act or if you don't go for it. How will you continue? What will happen if you continue to play the victim? So think about what your life will be like 1, 5, or 10 years down the road if you don't do this, if you don't go for it. And you really need to focus on giving yourself what you think you need from the other people. Is it time? Is it attention? What is it that you need? Is it an opportunity to learn? How can you do this? And then set one small goal that you would normally depend on for someone else and do that thing from someone else and do that thing. And I'm coming back to one small action can lead to exponential results. So I used to need, and back to my original example of how I got here, for example, I used to need a lot of approval to publish writing. I would be asking everybody. I'd be like, is this, someone going to be mad about this? Or do you think this will offend anybody? Or is this stupid? And I would ask people to read it. I was always dependent on what other people thought. And then I just went for it. I didn't ask for anyone's opinion. And I published the story about the women crying in the workshops. It led to Hasbro. It led to Carrie. It's led to other places. And it's led exponentially, honestly. It led to a lot of places that don't have anything to do with confidence, but all resulted from that place. So it comes back to your social environment. Who is around you that can be your champion? Who are some ways, or what are some ways you can find your friends? Is it friends? Is it colleagues? Is it people you work around or with or work for you? Is it other like-minded entrepreneurs here? Is it groups on Facebook or LinkedIn? How can you find people? And if you don't have a person, I'll be your person. I like being that person for people. And Carrie is a great person to be supportive for people. Mirror neurons. Find people who lift you up. Find those people who lift you up. And if you want to find some quick wins, make a list. Here's a tip. Make a list if you're sitting there in the morning overwhelmed. Knock off some really easy ones first, get them finished, and you're wiring your neurons to say that I've had some success now. And then you'll be able to take on some of those tasks that require a little more thought. So one way, there are two ways to motivate yourself, the quick wins, and the other is immediate massive action. Doesn't have to be super massive, but sometimes you need to go all in. So let's say I'm committing to, I'm going to develop this line of whatever it is for my business, and you make a phone call to set that up before you move. So taking immediate massive action doesn't have to be going all in with all the money, but it could be I'm committing to this course and I'm booking it before I get up, and then I'm booked, you know? So you can really think about those two ways to get your brain moving. As you build your skills, as you take little tiny steps, you will build your competence. As you build your competence, you will build your confidence. Okay, so tiny steps allow you to build your competence so that you can build confidence. And you can think about this as a zone of, it's called a zone of proximal development. And you can think of, let's say in the middle are those things you already know how to do, because a lot of confidence building is building competence, which requires learning. And you're not going to have all of the understanding right away. So what can you do independently? And then the zone of proximal development is, what can I do if I get help with that? And that's why Carrie and WeCan are so great, because they're making those connections all the time. What can I do when I have help with that? And then what can't I do, even if I'm guided? And those are the areas where you might outsource, you might get someone else to help. but knowing what those different components are of what you need to take on in your business is really important. So an example of that is I didn't start by developing this course on competence. I started in a bunch of other areas: resilience, adversity, and innovation and creativity. And they all led to here. They're all overlapped, but one thing always leads to another. And so, for example, if you want to be a better public speaker, you don't have to jump right into public speaking. Start with a podcast. No one can see you. Start with a FaceTime video or FaceTime live and do some practice. Record your video. Don't even go live. Record your video a couple times till you get it right, then post it. All of those things help you do a better job. And you have to have repetition and practice. So explicit repetition is when you're thinking about it. So when you remember you learned to tie your shoes, you had to really think about it. It became implicit. If you practice something enough, there is going to be a transition where it becomes implicit. And we've talked about failure. I know we're coming. I want to get through a couple other things. So I'm going. We've talked about failure. What's so bad about failure? If you've never failed, you've never tried. And you have to change your mindset around risk. So if you're not a little afraid, you're not pushing yourself far enough. And each failure is a stepping stone to something different. If you want to talk about minimizing fear, you can talk about minimizing fear of change, failure, and success. And within your slides, you will have, we aren't going to have time to work through this now. You can do this activity. Get really detailed on your fears. Ask, so what? What can you do for each of your fears? Who could you ask to help you? And then for each fear, if it did happen, and this is important, what could you do to repair the damage? What could you do to get back on track? Because I think that's a really important key. Most of the risks we take are not irreversible. You can also make yourself a change resume, and that really primes you to understand what positives can come out of each challenge. So you're looking at whatever changes happened, and you're looking at the good things that came out of it, even if it didn't feel good at the time. It's a great quote. Everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, then it's not the end. That's a John Lennon quote that I really enjoy. And it's just reminding us that we can find something positive out of all the negatives. So I was just talking about risk. Most of the things that we're going into are not irreversible. Most things are either avoidable by planning, or we can figure it out on the other side, which is really what confidence is. I liked this. When we talk about defining brave, it's not people who do things without fear. They are afraid and they do it anyway. And I didn't golf until I was 26 because I didn't want to look bad. I used to have a real fear of looking bad, and now I do anything. It's fine. So I changed my neurons. Okay, so just really quickly, because I know a lot of people have fears about stage fright, about talking publicly. So we'll spend a couple minutes on this. When we get stage fright, it is again because we've evolved to be protected, and we have to ask why we want to do this and visualize success. There are a couple things that you can do. You can create a ritual to give yourself a fighting chance. You can use a song to get you in a good mood. And you can meditate and visualize to get you in a good place. Some of the things that you can do around rituals, and I do this when I'm doing a course, I have the same ritual, or if I'm doing a workshop. I have a certain few pieces of jewelry that I always wear. My amethyst I'm always wearing, and my rings I always have on. What can you do to prepare your mind? When I used to write exams in university, I would play Blue Rodeo's Head Over Heels. I'm not sure why. That was my song that I played every time before my exam. And then I would go eat poutine after. You have to do those things and then get into character. And you can use an exposure ladder for this or anything else to get you to the point where you can take this or any other risk. So you can do this by practicing, practice. Imagine yourself speaking, and then you can perform alone. So you're going to visualize and you're going to practice by yourself. You can record yourself and watch yourself live. I've done all of these things, by the way. Then perform for someone who's positive as a cheerleader, perform for someone or more than one person, and keep building up gradually until you've done it so many times you're comfortable with it. A couple other things, and I do want to leave an opportunity for people to ask questions at the end. One of the things that you can use before you go into any high stress or high pressure situation is calm yourself down. So you're actually calming down your vagus nerve. And one of the best ways to do this is through box breathing, or thinking about your breathing. And box breathing is a really, really helpful tool for you or your families even, or your friends. And it's used by Navy SEALs. And it's to get them ready for all of the intense things they need to do. So you breathe out quickly, then you breathe in for 4, you hold it for 4, you breathe out for 4, and you hold it for 4. And if you can do that for a minute, you will dramatically change your vagus nerve, which is connected to your whole body, and you will calm. And then if you do it for 5 minutes, it could be revolutionary for you. That is a habit that you can do to start changing the wiring in your brain to be calm in these situations where you feel stress. Another important thing you can do when we're talking about neuroplasticity is start to journal. And when we express and receive gratitude, we're actually changing our brains. And we're changing our brains to look for the positives, which is really what we need to do when we're developing confidence. So every morning I write things that I'm grateful for. I flip to the back and I journal whatever I'm thinking about, my hopes and fears, whatever that is, every day. And if you can get into the habit of doing that, you will change your brain to look for the good. You might not be comfortable, but you have to do it anyways. So here is an activity that I would like you to work through on your own. What is an area where you were afraid or not confident before, but things turned out okay? And you can fill out this box. So think back to a time when you weren't sure about something. Write down what that was. Who did you turn to? Who were your people? And then what did you do to calm yourself down? What did you do? Was it meditate? Was it listen to music? Was it whatever it is? What inspiration did you use, or sagacity? And then what strategies did you use to move forward? Did you make a plan? So you can fill that out for something in the past that worked. And then resilient people do the same thing for the future. They build on what they did in the past to use the same strategies, and you keep building. And it's the same for confidence. That's how they're so related, resilience and confidence. What is an area where you're feeling not confident now? Who can you turn to? Who will be there in your corner? Who can you trust? What can you do to calm yourself down? Is it breathing? What inspiration can you use, and what strategies can you use to move forward? If you complete that, it will help you feel more grounded into your challenges. You need to create a go for it culture for yourself. And we need to do that for each other. So what is inside you that needs to happen? Find your people and be that person for others. If you are that person for others, it will come back to you tenfold. And think about really, who are you doing this for? This is my motivation. My kids are watching me all the time. And I know that if I want them to take leaps in the world, I have to take big leaps in the world. And I know that. And that's at my oldest son's wonky COVID graduation outside the school in the parking lot. It's so weird. Anyhow, that's where that was. But every day I know that I owe it to my kids to show up and go for it too. And when I saw this slide about, for you to be born today from 12 previous generations, you need a total of 4,094 ancestors over the last 400 years. This was really revolutionary for me. Think about all the challenges they faced. Think about all the risks they had to take, all the setbacks. And if you think about everything they went through, those 2,048 ninth great grandparents all the way up, that they had, for you to be here on this earth, how can you not go for it? How can you not live your life? So I just sped through a lot of slides, and I hope that you got something out of it that you can share with others, or you can keep for yourself, that you can do a few other things. And I just want you to go for it. And it's my favorite thing to do, is watching people go for it. So please contact me at LinkedIn or by email, or phone me, I don't care. And we've got some time, I guess, to for some questions.
Yeah, we do have some time for questions, and Theresa might be. Oh, sorry, I'm hearing my own voice echoing back to me, sorry. I know that Theresa might be able to stay a couple extra minutes as well, and to make sure that we address some questions. Some great comments in the chat. This was rich, oh my goodness. This was rich, and if you didn't read another book about this subject in your life, this was so full of advice and practical tips. So does anyone have a question who might be out there? Either you want to drop it into the chat or unmute yourself and share it with the rest of us. Or it could be a comment, but feel free.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Shay. I wanted to ask a quick question. I am really struggling to change my belief of feeling worthy. I feel like I wasn't seen or validated by my parents, and I really need to change this, because I feel this is what's at the core of a lot of limitations for me. Is there anything, and I love the idea of neuroplasticity, I'm a big believer in neuroscience. Is there anything I can do to speed up the process? Because I kind of feel this is the one little thing that's stopping me from becoming invincible, basically.
Okay. These are my personal practices, and I'm just going to share them because I've been through a lot of stuff too, and have been there also, and been really down in the dark. And the things that helped me the most, truthfully, were meditation, learning how to meditate and doing guided meditation, and binaural beats, which is something I didn't talk about just because I didn't necessarily have time. But binaural, are you familiar with binaural beats?
Yes.
Yes. You are familiar? Okay. Yeah. Yes. So I use, for other people, binaural beats, you get over earphones and you put them on, and they emit 2 different tones into your ear, and they bring your brain to like closer to a meditative state. So it's easier to just get there. And then you can have subliminals that are, you can fall asleep with them on and have subliminals, and they get you to a relaxation place. I use Vortex Success, and I don't tell people this because a lot of people don't believe it, but I'll tell you because other people have found it useful. There's one around self-love, and I used to listen to that every night. And yeah, but meditation and binaural beats, walking, and affirmations, and then just working through some of the exercises and writing and building, and it just finding other people to help really helps too. Like finding other people who value the things that you have to say. I don't know if that helps, but those are the things that help me. Anything else?
Yes, just wanted to say thank you so much. That was very helpful. Thank you.
And I did drop the spelling of that into the chat if anyone, because I had to look it up. I'd never heard of that before. So yeah. Interesting, very interesting. And can I just throw in a comment there to that question, that I think that what you said, Theresa, about building a community and surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded. Shay was mentioning that she didn't have that early support. So now there are, I mean, especially during COVID, with all of these virtual opportunities for us more than ever before, to find a community that we can align with. And I'm not saying it has to be weekend, but it could be, anywhere, if you're in your local community or elsewhere, or even, face-to-face, if those are in your bubble. Find the people. And I will say that was a part of the turning point for me. I was supported as a child, but not in an entrepreneurial sense. So finding that risk-taking move, I found those people somewhere else other than my immediate family, because I had no entrepreneurs in my family. So to find a different way of thinking, I sought out those people. And I think that honestly, that was a starting point for me. That was absolutely key. Finding people who would encourage me and push me to take some risks and be more confident.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're great for that, Carrie.
Any other questions, anyone, before we have to wrap up here today? Sorry, there's a question in the chat, Theresa. Chrissy has a question. What kind of dialogue should we use with ourselves when doubting or worrying about pricing or in the need to validate our services, like the value of them? So there are always people that respond negatively. For instance, you're priced too high. I think that's the idea there. So we know we are providing an exceptional service, but we allow people to get in our head. So when it comes to pricing your services, which speaks to that idea of worth, but now in an actual financial sense. Do you have any thoughts about that, Theresa?
Well, I struggle with that too, because as a consultant, I'm billing on me, right? So it's hard sometimes to think about what I'm worth and if people think that's too much or not. And I guess what I've had to do is, for me personally, is really think about who my ideal client is, and you aim for them. And your ideal client has to be someone who can afford your products or your services, right? And there are going to be people who don't. And even within my clients, I've had to fire clients. That's how you can look at it. I would actually change the language, like you're firing some of your customers, or you're eliminating them from who you want to serve, because you're the one providing what you're providing, and you want people who are grateful for it, and then you'll be able to provide great service to them. So I think also research, like market research, would help with that, right? Because I don't think that what you're doing is probably outlandish, and if it's not, then you're validated by what's going on around you also. And there's always going to be people unhappy about every single thing. So,
and you know, that is actually a great topic for an entirely new workshop on pricing. And we haven't actually had one, but I've made a note to actually seek out a speaker on that topic. So thank you so much. I think that was Chrissy who suggested that. I missed a question from Felicia. Where do we find good affirmations to use to help build our confidence? Do you have any suggestion for that, Theresa?
The affirmations I have used come from books that I've read mostly, and from like authors or people that I trust. So, and I know some people find these things. I have sort of when people are really popular, people say that they're not as good, but then I think just because they're popular doesn't mean they're not good. So like Tony Robbins is a good person to go to. Gay Hendricks wrote a book called The Big Leap, and that really helped me. I remember walking and saying his affirmations again and again, the ones he suggested. Deepak Chopra has some great mantras that you can use. You can follow their practices. So those people are people that I like to, yeah, and Pinterest, someone just said, you can find them on memes and stuff, but some people have actual programs or ways to structure how you do it. And those people are some of the people that I go to.
Excellent. I was just looking up the name of an author. There's a book called Embers by an Indigenous author named Richard Wagamies, I think it is. I'll put it in the chat. Just an amazing book that was brought to me from another entrepreneur as well. That very short reading. I'll just put his name in here. Oh yes, and Theresa, do you want to give the name of, is Vortex Success? Is that the name of the other YouTube meditation?
Yep. Yeah, so I would, I can put it in if you don't, it's Vortex Success, and I would just go into YouTube and look for Vortex Success Binaural Beats, and then you'll find, and then I would do like self-love if that was the one, or confidence building or whatever it is. Yep.
Yeah. Any final questions before we wrap up today? Okay, hearing none, I think there's a lot of food for thought here today. My life is richer having spent this 90 minutes with you all. I just love the chat as well that's been happening. By all means, if you are free to join us next week, we have our virtual cafe for women entrepreneurs. And it's, I believe it's the 23rd. It's an hour from 10 to 11. And someone was talking in the chat about how do I think it was a private message they sent, how can I be more confident in speaking? And I was like, you know what, come out to the virtual cafe and participate, because if that is the first move that you make to public speak, is just to speak in a group, I mean, you got to start somewhere. So I would do that, get bold, share your thoughts. Next week, the topic we're talking about is finding funding during COVID-19. And there's no expert in the room per se, just experiences, and women are going to bring those thoughts. So we've covered topics like marketing and networking, and now next week we're talking about funding, because that's at the top of, I think it's top of mind for everyone. So if anyone reaches out to me for the recording today, I'll also include a link to that if anyone wants to join us. On behalf of all of us, Theresa, thank you so much for your time. And I want to commend all of you for carving out 90 minutes in your day to invest in yourself and your growth mindset, because this 90 minutes could actually be what changes everything for you. So I think we can all applaud virtually Theresa and to give her a thumbs up if you like. Thank you so much. And to everyone, have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great day, everyone. See ya.